some reason. Here we go. Oh, Babu is here. Wow, Babu has been coming to everyone. That's awesome. Mark is here. That's great. You see, Greg, Paul, 13 people already. More coming on. Just to remind everybody, tomorrow we have another presentation as well on Turkic people from Huns to Ottomans. And then this is going to be a prelude to the series of Middle Eastern presentation done by Richard. He wants to start in July. He's going to run basically a poll tomorrow to figure out which days you guys want to do it: Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. I mean, not Saturday, because Saturday we dedicate to ancient Rome right now. So
Hey, Zach, I'm sorry to interrupt. Richard's going to do a series on what was the title there? I missed.
Basically Turkic people and
Okay.
Middle Eastern, yeah. The same thing.
I'm sorry, do you see my screen? I mean, like,
Yeah, I do, but you need to start. You need to say "got it" and say "done."
I did it, but it doesn't help. Does it present? No, I didn't.
Yeah, it's presenting. So now you can.
No, it's not presenting. No.
We can see it.
I know you can see it, but it's a reduced format. Something didn't
Gotta
work.
get the slideshow, not share.
Not share what?
You see what it says?
Hold down Tools. Oh, sorry, it says slide. It says slide on the top there. Pull
This
that
one?
down. Yeah,
No,
that's not it. I'll go to Tools.
try view.
Yeah, view.
Then
I'll go to Tools.
Full screen.
Full screen. There we go.
There we go. Arriba.
Arriba, abajo.
That's it. We can all see the whole thing.
All right, good.
Hey,
good, good,
hey,
good.
hey, Greg, do you mind if I ask you a question before you start?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to summarize the previous one about the Roman kings. Is it true to say that they, if I remember correctly, they had 7 kings, and that these kings were not hereditary, and that they were all Etruscan? Is that true?
No.
Okay,
Only 3 last kings considered to be Etruscan. It's and they were not hereditary. It's true. It's 7 kings that we know of, but there could have been many more. I mean, they seem to be, but at least these are the ones that. The first, and it's divided into 2 periods, early and later. Later is the 3 last kings that's considered to be Etruscans, even though the Servius Tullius was not necessarily, he was adopted by the Etruscan, the Tarquinius Priscus.
Well, he was a, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say the two Tarquins were Etruscan.
Right. Yeah,
but not
Tarquinius
Servius
Priscus
Tullius.
and Tarquinius the Proud. Servius Tullius was not genetically Etruscan, but he was raised and adopted by the Etruscan family of Priscus. So
And
he
a question.
considered to be, you know.
And a question. These were kings of Rome in particular, and a modest area around Rome.
Yes.
Or
Yes, well, they were kings of the Roman city-state.
yeah.
Yeah.
And city-state would include the environments and basically as much as the Romans were able to conquer.
So did it answer your question? Or did something? Did I miss something?
Yeah, it was basically more complicated than what I remembered.
Yeah, and there were 7 kings that are mentioned in sources like Livy, but scholars believe that there were more.
Okay, and so only some of them were Etruscan, but I was corrected that none of them were handed down to their sons.
And
Yes, there was not hereditary.
there is an argument that their Etruscanness did not represent an Etruscan dominance in Rome. It was just their own individual ethnicity.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So shall we start or should we wait?
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah.
Greg, only one thing is maybe a little bit louder, just a smidge.
I would agree with that. Yes, I thought it was just me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Please let me know.
Me too.
Yeah. Is it good now?
It's getting better, but if you could do it even louder, it would be better.
I don't
Yeah.
know how to. What could be louder than?
You could just speak closer to the mic or just speak louder.
Yeah, I do. Okay. All right. Is it good now?
Better.
That's very good.
Okay. I'm gonna try to speak louder. Okay. So something is my microphone is not. So we'll start. So you see this sign SPQR. You know, we don't know exact origin when it appeared. I mean, it started to be used widely later on in the 1st century BCE. But the scholars believe that it originated around the foundation of the Republic. Obviously, it couldn't have existed in the King's period. So SPQR, Senate Populus Romano, which is Senate and Roman people kind of ruling together. Senate and people are Rome. Now I have a few kind of sites, a few maps that I think are very useful. This is kind of like a map shows the expansion, Roman expansion. You see the very dark times. This is the pre-Republic, you know, right here. This is the kingdom. That's what kings ruled, and then the Republic started to expand, you know, into getting territory of Latium, Latians, and
I didn't want to go north.
Sabians a little bit north of Etruscans and Volsci and a few other tribes. And then eventually it just shows, you see by the period about dates, like by the 300 to 98, they expanded even more and more. So that kind of shows, you know, in perspective how they expanded. So this is this is more from the Etruscan studies, but it shows the territory of Etruria, and this is like a little bit larger territory of Etruria and major cities. So now it's interesting. I noticed that the early republic established by coincidence about the same year, like 1 year even earlier than democracy of Athens. The Cleisthenes reforms were enacted in 508 BC, and the Republic officially 509. Of course, it's not on the same scale, but so now we left off when Tarquini the Proud, because of the you remember the story with his son and the rape. He was expelled from Rome, and the Republic was established. So, but he didn't give up. I mean, he was a king, so he wanted to retake Rome back, and it took a number of years and a few attempts. So the first one, he aligned himself with the king of Clusium. You see, this is the you know, Etruscan city, very famous king, well known by the name of La Porcena. I mean, by the way, this whole period from 509 to 387, almost all records were destroyed by the during the invasion of Gauls. So it is kind of semi-legendary stories here, or maybe fully legendary. No, but I always give some credit to oral tradition here, because a lot of it went oral. Maybe some few documents remained here and there, but most of it was destroyed when the Gauls sacked Rome in 387. But so we now we're talking about this King Lars Porcena, Clusium, and he also known, by the way, when I was traveled in Tuscany, he is known to found another city that is very famous right now by the name of Montepulciano, and this is the city well known for its wine. I know Mark is knows a lot about wines, but he founded that city as well. La Porcena, it's also in Tuscany. So
And very good wine
yes, yes, definitely.
and beautiful place.
Right, right, and people who live in Tuscany right now are always very much insulted when Americans say, "Oh yeah, I tried that Montepulciano d'Abruzzo," and they say, "Well, this is not the
That's not-
Tuscan wine." This is,
No.
you know, right, and there, this is like in Apulia, and a lot of people here don't even know the difference, but they would be like, "Oh, you don't know Tuscan wine." Well, anyway, so Porcena, Lars Porcena with Tarquini the Proud, he with his army attacked Rome. So as you can see, here is the Rome, here is the Clusium. They just go, and this is the kind of how Rome looks like in terms of the hills. So you see like all the 7 hills. That's and this is Field of Mars, the Tiber, and the place, another hill. The Triniculum hill is around here, which is we're going to talk about this. That's near Vatican contemporary. So so he attacks Rome, and he comes, and there is only one bridge around here. I'm sorry, I don't know why it's jumping like this. So there is only one bridge here. He goes to the bridge, but the Romans started like very desperate attempt to destroy the bridge. They brought a number of people. They are actually known by the Roman traditions. You know, the bridge called Pons Sublicius. That's the name of the bridge, and then there are Publius Horatius, Cocles, and then a few others came and tried to destroy, hold off the army to destroy the bridge, and they kind of like they couldn't cross it, and they retreated. Well, after that, Lars Porcena proceeded to put a siege to the city. He controlled the river, all the traffic on the river, and the supplies. He is, of course, ravaged the surrounding territories. And his garrison was at this hill of Triniculum. So next, what happened, and that's a very famous story, you may have heard of it, that with an approval of the Senate, a Roman youth named Gaius Mucius stealthily entered the Etruscan camp with an intent of assassinating Porcena. So, however, Mucius, when he came close to the king, he could not tell apart the king from his secretary. So he thought that the guy is the king, so he killed him. And it turns out to be a secretary. He made a mistake, but now he was apprehended. He was captured, and when Porcena started to question him, he was very brave. He openly declared his identity and what has been his intent, and then he threatened that he was just merely one of the 300 Roman youths who would attempt to do a similar deed, and they will assassinate Lars Porcena. And to prove his valor, Mucius thrust his right hand into one of the Etruscan campfires, and just kept it there without even moving a muscle and not making even a sound until it burned. And thereby he earned for himself and his descendants, cognomen Scaevola, which means lefty. It was the left hand that burned. So Porsenna was shocked at the youth's bravery and dismissed him from Etruscan camp, freed him to return to Rome. And eventually, most historical sources say that the siege ended with a peace treaty. So he retreated after that. So, so after this, Tarquinius, and this shows a lot of, went to another ally, and this is his father-in-law, king of city Tusculum, Latin city Tusculum, right here. And again, the Rome is here. So his name was Octavius Mamilius, and he was the dictator of Tusculum. So it happened around 498 to 496. You know, consider it's more than 10 years after Tarquin the Proud was expelled. And he, I'm sorry, it's not his father-in-law, it's his son-in-law. You know, he married his daughter. So, and he convinced him to give him an army, and as a head of this army, he won a battle at the lake Regelus. Okay, so this lake located right between Rome and Tusculum. However, it was drained around the 4th century BCE, so you don't see it here, but there was a lake there. The Rome fought other battles, they defeating him, and eventually established the supremacy of the Latin countries, and that it lost after the fall of monarchy, and after the Latin defeat and the death of his son-in-law Tarquinius went. He just had no more power. So because Tusculum was by the way, I made a mistake. I said that the Latins won this battle. No, the Romans won that battle at the Lake Regelus. And after his son-in-law Mamilius was killed, he had nothing else left to him. I'm talking about Tarquin, and he retreated to the Greek colony of Cumae, that's near Napoli right now, and eventually he died there. The ruler of Cumae was Aristodemus at the time, and he died there in 495, almost 15 years after his expulsion. So this is, the end of attempt to retake the Rome. So now the next period is called Roman Volscian Wars. So you see the Volsci, this is the tribes of Volsci, this is their territory beyond jumping. What did I do? Sorry about that. So beyond Latin territory. So these Roman Volscian Wars lasted for over a century. And it started from the first invasion of Volscian invasion in 495. So, and here we come to this famous story of Coriolanus. You know, you probably heard of this name from Shakespeare. So Gaius Marcius Coriolanus, has been like a prominent war leader, general, and he's got his name during the war and the brilliant victory over the city Corioli, which is right here. You see Corioli, and that's how he got his nickname Coriolanus. His name is Gaius Marcius. So everybody was looking up to him, and so the Battle of Corioli happened in 493. But prior to that, and we're going to talk about this more, I'm going to talk briefly about some social reforms and the secessions of the plebs, but then Paul will give much more detailed story about all that. So the first secession of plebs happened in 494 BCE, and they established the office of tribunes. Coriolanus was an aristocrat, obviously. He resisted this bitterly. In 493, in this Battle of Corioli, plebs did not participate. He had a huge, grudge against this whole class. He really wanted to have a reversal of pro-plebeian political reforms. And when Senate wanted to subsidize prices for bread, he argued against it, since plebs refused to participate in the war and blackmailed the Senate to gain new rights. Tribunes incited plebs at this point. In 491, that's when it happened. The tribunes incited the plebs to execute him by throwing him from Tarpeian Rock. We talked before about Tarpeian Rock. I just wanted to reiterate this story a little bit, just to show you where Tarpeian Rock is. It's on the southern part of the Capitoline Hill. You see Capitoline Hill right here. So Tarpeian Rock is somewhere here. Okay, so it's very famous for public executions of traitors, mostly. I mean, so it was carrying a huge shame and consequences. So they wanted to execute him specifically by throwing him from the Tarpeian Rock. So it's about 25 meters high, and it's called that because of the Vestal Virgin Tarpeia. So after the rape of Sabines at the time of King Romulus, the Sabinian king Titus Tatius wanted to retake the Rome, and Vestal Virgin Tarpeia opened the city gates to Sabines on Capitoline Hill in return for gold. So, but when the troops, Sabinians, rushed into the city, they crushed her with their shields, apparently not necessarily on purpose, and eventually she was buried on the top of the rock, and that had her name, and this was the place of shame, and that's from there on, this public execution by throwing from the rock carried a stigma of shame. The standard method of in Rome was execution. Method of execution was strangulation. Tarpeian Rock was something special.
Greg?
Yes.
I have a question. Perhaps are you or Paul going to get into just what the political structure was? I mean, I guess the Senate existed. Were the plebs one faction in the Senate? Did the Senate operate by majority popular vote, or?
We will talk about this.
Okay.
I'm going to talk in great detail about the
Yes.
plebs.
Yes, I will talk a little more in general, about all of those things, and then Paul will go into detail. So just talking about this, finishing with this Tarpeian Rock. The last execution, I found this interesting. The last execution of throwing from the Tarpeian Rock was leader of Zealots, Simon Bar Giora, and it was conducted in 71 CE under Vespasian. So when plebs, when the tribunes incited the plebs and wanted to execute Coriolanus, the patricians violently defended him. There were like all kinds of fights broke out. So the trial was scheduled, and eventually they decided on a lesser punishment, and they simply voted to exile him. So Coriolanus fled to the enemies of Rome, to Volsci, and he particularly came to the leader of Volsci, Attius Tullus Aphidius, and eventually both of them led the Volscian army against Roman towns. So he really was so angry at Rome that he attacked Rome at the head of the Volscian army. And he was a very talented leader, war leader, very successful. And they took a lot of Roman towns that were under Roman rule. They retook all the formerly Volscian towns that Romans took earlier. And then they took, among those, they took the Lavinium. Okay. See, this is the Lavinium. If you remember, Lavinium is the city founded by supposedly Aeneas, and because he married the daughter of Latin chief by the name of Lavinia and founded this city, so it's kind of carried some sentiments for Romans. So they took that city, and then they marched on Rome. So the Volscians initially camped at the Cluvian Trench, which is 5 miles outside of Rome, in here, and then Coriolanus directed the Volscians to target plebeian properties around the Rome and spare patricians, because he was like really hated them. So all attempts for negotiations were refuted. He didn't want to talk to Romans. He was so angry, and the Romans were in a very desperate situation. They were overwhelmed. They had no allies that could have helped them. They felt that they're doomed. So eventually, they compelled Coriolanus' mother, Volumnia, and his wife, Virgilia, with his 2 sons, together come and beg him to cease his attack on Rome. So this is the picture of his mother, Volumnia, and wife, Virgilia, with 2 sons, begging him. So Coriolanus was overcome by their pleas and moved Volscian camp back to the city, back away from the city, and ended the siege. He said to his mother famously, "The mother, you saved Rome, but you ruined your son." So Attius Tullius Cepheid, the leader of Volscians, he ended Coriolanus' fame, because even though he was the dictator, he was nominally leader, but Coriolanus got all the admiration of the troops, and he was the one who they saw as the great leader. So he really envied him. And once Coriolanus stopped this siege, eventually when they came back, he started the trial. And during the trial, Coriolanus was killed by a mob. The people were Volscians outraged, they felt betrayed, and he was killed by a mob. So Rome honored the service of these women by erection of a temple dedicated to Fortuna. And the story, obviously, is the basis for the tragedy of Coriolanus, written by Shakespeare. Now, Anybody, any questions, comments so far?
Greg, this is Lisa, and I've got a question for you. In general, how large are the populations that we're talking about at this point in time, like Rome and the Vulcans and stuff, and how many military men was Coriolanus leading at this time? Do you know roughly numbers?
I can only guess. I don't really know the numbers. I would imagine that the city of Rome, I don't know, tens of thousands, maybe 20,000, 30. I don't know. And you would imagine that the armies were probably just a few thousand. That's my understanding generally of this kind of wars. Anybody knows better, please speak up. Well, okay, so this is, by the way, the oh no, this is somebody else who's gonna talk. All right, let's look back into this map. I think this is like very nice, showing the cities around and the tribes. So now this has all happened in 491, okay, BC. When Coriolanus attacked Rome, he was expelled from Rome, exiled, and then attacked. So now we go. I mean, these wars were on and off anyway. What's going on? Now there is another interesting event happened by about 460 BCE. The government of Rome was already shared between the original Romans, Latins, and Sabine people. So there were three major groups in Rome, ethnic groups from the local tribes. And as you see, the Latini and then Sabines were in this area. I'm close, but it's that Sabine, Latini, and the original Romans. So the greatest enemies of Rome at this time were Volsci. Obviously, they have Volscian wars that we talked about, and they're still going. And another big tribe of Acri, local tribe. They also were constantly attacking Rome. So in 458 BC, Acri occupied Tuscaloo. So at Tuscaloo at this point, if you remember, once they took care of Coriolanus, this became this became Roman city. So Acri attacked Tuscaloo. At this point, consul Municius Esquilinus had led an army against them, but had been trapped by the Acrians in the Alban Hills. And a few Roman horsemen escaped and returned to Rome to tell the Senate what happened. The Senate fell into panic. There was like the almost all Roman army at the time, and they authorized the other consul, Horatius Pulvillus, to nominate a dictator. So Horatius nominated Cincinnatus and as a dictator for the term of 6 months. So you know this famous name of Cincinnatus. I mean, that's I wanted to show. Yeah, that's the coin. You know, it's Cincinnatus. I guess it's much later coin that just in his commemoration. Well, anyway, so now what happened is that Cincinnatus went to Roman Forum and nominated as his master of horse, which is second in command, usually commanding the horse regiment, the cavalry, Lucius Tarquitius, who was considered one of the finest soldiers in Rome. And then he went to Roman Popular Assembly and issued an order to the effect that every man of military age, because they were depleted at this point, the whole army was trapped. So every man of military age should report to the Campus Martius, which is the field of Mars, by the end of the day. Just to show you where this is the field of Mars, Campus Martius. Okay. So now, once the army was assembled, Cincinnatus took them to fight Equus in the Battle of Mons Alcides, which is, where is it here? Yeah, I know it must be in this area, but I'm not sure it's on this map. Okay, so and in this battle, he attacked them from two sides. He led the infantry, and Tarquinius led the cavalry. Equus was surprised by the double attack, and soon were cut to pieces. So after this war ended, and Cincinnatus disbanded his army, he then resigned his dictatorship and returned to his farm a mere 15 days after he has been nominated dictator for the half a year. So that's, and this act is, brought him fame, and he was considered to be a paragon of ethics, a civic duty, that he could have stayed as a dictator for another half a year, but he resigned after 15 days because his task was finished, and there was no more need for him. There was only, service to the people. So, in just as wanted to last thing about his name, because we know there is this city in Ohio, Cincinnati, and it is not a coincidence here. So the story of this, the name of this city is that in 1790, Arthur St. Clair, the governor of Northwest Territory, changed the name of the settlement to the name Cincinnati in honor of the Society of Cincinnati, of which he was president. And this society got its name from this Roman general who saved Rome. And this society honored the idea of return to civilian life by military officers following revolution, rather than imposing military rule, and also obviously honored Washington, who had the name American Cincinnatus. He had this nickname because Washington retired after the war. Instead of making himself a king, he had an inordinate amount of power and popularity, but he retired. So in a way, this name Cincinnati honoring this Roman general and George Washington. He was, of course, later on was the first president, but he could have, he had a power to become a king or whatever. So,
Greg, it's
yes.
It's Beverly, and I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So I'm trying to understand, in all of these competing places, were the skirmishes, outright wars going on every day, disrupting daily life? And along with that, what languages were being spoken?
Okay, so this is
Thank you.
people. Yeah, sure. First of all, this is a neighboring people, so we know that there is a Latin language. I mean, most of the languages around them, maybe Etruscan was somewhat different, but most of them were very similar. I'm sure they probably could understand each other. A Latin language, it seems to be kind of maybe it was locally used. As far as the skirmishes every day, I don't think so. They usually what happened, there is a campaign, the military campaigns that usually ends up, not always, but end up in some battles. And then usually people return. Sometimes they capture cities. Sometimes they just return. You know, the war with Wolsey lasted for over 100 years, and it was just on and off. It doesn't mean it was even every year. but occasionally it flares up and goes back, usually with kind of success from one side and maybe success from another side. There is no question of conquest here. They didn't have the resources neither side.
And what was the purpose of all of these small wars, battles, skirmishes? Was it the purpose of gaining territory? Did they take slaves?
I'm sure that the purpose usually is it's a power struggle that always happens between neighboring countries. Of course, everybody wants to expand and take more territory, and the question is that at this time, nobody evolved. Like Rome slowly started to evolve as a dominating power, but it took a long time, for the Rome. But because there was nobody could really dominate the whole region, they didn't have enough resources, neither side. That's why these wars were continued. Yeah, they took slaves. Absolutely. They took
Can I make a
slaves.
comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the ancient sources are full of references to the Romans having land hunger. So you're absolutely right. Territory was a major motivation in these wars, and the lands that were captured were called the public lands, and these were the subjects of conflicts in Rome for all the way until the end of the Republic. It was a huge thing, but this is how the Romans acquired their public land. The other question about warfare going on, this was the point in time where wars happened in the summer, and because the soldiers were farmers, and I'm sorry, wars happened in the winter, and then when the summer came, they would go back to had it right the first time. Wars would happen in the summer, then they would get back done in time to go back for the harvest. So it was very. There were cases where wars, went on throughout the whole year, but they were the sources talk about them as being great innovations. The real standard for warfare was summer warfare.
All right.
Thank you.
So, and by the way, now the next part will illustrate, by the way, what happens usually. And this is the part where we talk about the war against the neighboring city, Etruscan city. Now the Rome is expanding north and west. So you see the city of Veii, the closest Etruscan city to Rome. So in 406 BCE, Rome declared war against Veii, still very powerful, well fortified, and its allies of Faleri and Capena. You see Capena here, and this kind of required the siege of the cities that lasting many years. And at some point in 396, it was going for years, Rome suffered a severe defeat after 10-year war. And Romans at this point decided to make a new general, and there was a very famous man there by the name of Marcus Furius Camillus. So he commanded the final strike against Veii, and the way he did it, he dug into the soft rock below the walls, and while destructing Vetian with attacks, the citizens of Veii with attacks on the walls, and then he infiltrated the city drainage system and emerged in the citadel, and that led to their defeat, and Romans finally took the city. But they were so enraged against Veii because this war was going for over 10 years, and Rome suffered defeats in the middle of it. They were so infuriated that and maybe that's why he's got his name Furious, that they basically killed the entire adult male population and made slaves of the women and children. And the plunder was very rich and extensive, including statue of Juno that was taken to Rome. Juno, it's equivalent of Greek goddess Hera, wife of Zeus, or in this case, Jupiter. So now this Marcus Furius Camillus, I mean, I have, that's supposedly his image. I mean, we really don't know if it's really true, but that's what
Right.
we have.
Is that a contemporary coin of them? Or is that something done quite some time later?
It's definitely sometime later. I don't think they made points like this at the time. But at least that's the image that we have right now. How accurate that is, which is is hard to say. All right. So now Camillus, he's lived. He was born in 446 BCE and died in 365 BCE. Was a Roman soldier and statement of the patrician class. So according to Livy and Plutarch, Camillus triumphed 4 times, was dictator 5 times, and was honored eventually with the title of the second founder of Rome, and you will see why later on. So after defeating the Veii, the Romans had effectively completed the conquest of their immediate Etruscan neighbors, as well as secured their position against the immediate threat posed by the tribes people of Apennine Hills. So you would say that the southern Etruscan cities, a lot of them were taken at this point, and Rome expanded a little bit to the north and west. So after a lengthy series of struggles, the supremacy became fixed in 393, when Romans finally subdued Volsci and Equi. So in 393, finally, they started to emerge as dominating force by subduing not only part of the Etruscan territory, but also Equi and Volsci. So the Etruscan power was now limited to the northern Etruria, and Rome was dominant city in Latium. So the entire Italian peninsula was impressed by Roman victories of Camillus. Equi, Volsci, and Capena proposed peace treaties. Rome increased its territory by 70%, and some of the lands were distributed to needy citizens. Rome became the most powerful nation in the central peninsula. However, as it often happened in democracies or partial democracies, Camillus was impeached by the political adversaries, by the accusation of embezzlement of Etruscan plunder, and then he went to exile. Okay, so let me go to the first map that kind of shows the expanse. So you see, this is the Roman expansion, and then it started to expand more and more. I would say you see the part of the Volsci, Equi is right here, and so this is the expanse. So now it became very serious power, and you see it took part of the Etruscan territory here, small part there. Okay, now let's talk about gold, because this is now very, very important thing what happened with gold. And this is, I found this map, which is, I thought it was fantastic. And this is the Celtic expansion. You know, gold was Celts, obviously, and specifically it's a Celtic or Gallic tribe of Sinonius that started to expand. Well, I think about it, what we know. So the Celtic culture, right? There is a early Celtic culture which is called Hallstatt, which is the place in central in Switzerland, and this culture existed between maybe 1200 and 500 BCE, and then it was replaced by a next Celtic culture called Latium around 500 BCE. And during this time, there was an expansion, and that's the time you see in the 6th century BC. That's where the Celts expanded into Spain, where there were Iberian tribes, and that's how we later known Celtic Iberian tribes. So that's only happened in 6. Obviously, they didn't conquer everything, or it took time. It's not like it was not like just a conquest by war. It just spreading, domination, migration, maybe some conquest. You know, also clearly you see there was 2 major invasions, they believe, of the in the period of Latin, maybe or late Holstein, into the Britain. You know, it's very interesting that the Britain, as you know, was populated populated by the hunter-gatherers prior to the Channel, because it was the whole territory until the late ice last ice period finished approximately 10,000 BCE. So at that time, this you know, was populated by the hunter-gatherers, and of course, eventually, typical migrations that happened through the Europe, what they called during the Neolithic period, the Anatolian farmers eventually spread and brought the agriculture into the Central and Western Europe, and in about 6th century, 6,000 years BCE, maybe 7,000 BCE. That's when the that migration happened. It reached Britain approximately 4,000 BCE, and this is the migration. These are the people who influenced and mixed with the hunter-gatherers. They're the ones who built the Stonehenge. And then obviously Indo-European migration happened between 2,000 and 3,000 years BCE. You know, they also played role. They reached England maybe 500 years later, and then eventually there was a migration, Celtic migration in 5th century BC, and then there was another one. There are 2 groups of Celtic languages they found there, and they believe that they could be a result of this 2 different migrations. They are related languages, but nevertheless, the scholars believe that
Greg?
that's the result. Yeah.
Sorry. For these Celtic expansions in the 2nd and 5th century BCs, I thought beforehand that Britain was already populated with by the Celts. So is this?
No.
Are these completely new?
Completely new. No, Celts only moved there approximately 5th century BC, but at the period of Latin, the expansion of Latin.
So what were those people called before?
Well, what they called before, they didn't have. They had all kinds of names that we don't usually associate with. There was different culture. Mostly, as they said, about 4,000 BCE, there was a culture, what they called Anatolian farmers, that brought agriculture. They started migrating out of Anatolia in about 6,000-7,000 BC, and then eventually they spread everywhere, and they brought. They didn't overwhelm. They brought the culture. They brought what they call Neolithic Revolution. It happened later. Yeah, you know, we know that Neolithic Revolution started in Mesopotamia somewhere, and you know, and then it spread into Anatolia, eventually into Eastern and Western Europe, and it only reached about 4,000 BC Britain, and of course later on, as we know, later on the Indo-European migration, the Pontic Caspian steps right there, also had its influence and also reached England between 2000 and 2400 BCE. So the later cultures. Yeah.
Greg, just to comment on that. As far as I know, the Celts were the first Indo-European people to reach Britain. There certainly were people there before, and as you say, there were hunter-gatherers and then the farmers from the Middle East. But I don't think there's any evidence of them speaking an Indo-European language. I think the Celts were the westernmost wave of the Indo-Europeans, as far as we know, followed by the Germans and the Latins. So I don't think, and I think you're right. The Celts arrived in England around 500 BC, but I'm not sure there's any evidence that there was a pre-Celtic Indo-European language in Britain. Thanks.
Yeah, Ralph, do you mind if I follow that up? I think if from a genetic point of view, my understanding is that if you look at the English people, that their genetics are really haven't changed so much. I apologize for the ambulance. That their genetics haven't changed so much since all these invasions, the Celtic invasion, the Roman invasion, the Norman invasion, the Germanic invasion, the Viking invasions, that each time, all those invasions, each one of those was kind of like how Richard explained the Arab expansion, just kind of the surface, like a cultural veneer over the top of an unchanging genetic base. Would you agree with that?
I think that's right. Now, as far as I know, the DNA of Britain is, as I understand, is Celtic. That's right. So it wasn't changed by the Roman invasion and conquest. It wasn't changed by the Anglo-Saxon. But I'm not sure.
I don't think, Ralph, it's Celtic. It's they say that on matrimonial side, it's 80% hunter-gatherers. That even Celtic is mostly cultural influence.
Okay.
And as far as the Indo-European people, you know, I have done the research, and I'm very positive that the Pontic Caspian people reached, according to scholars, reached England between 2000 and 2400 BCE. They may not have dominated linguistically or genetically, but there are traces of Indo-European genetics prior to Celtic invasion. Celtic invasion definitely was the most influential up to the point and dominated culturally and linguistically the whole continent. But you may want to look it up later on. There is an evidence that there were some migration prior to that, not Celtic, but Indo-European around 2000 BCE. But you may be right as far as the dominating language in Britain. I don't think they have culturally changed, but there is a genetic and evidence and some of the tools that they brought and some of the burials that they believe that there was some people prior. But as far as the Celtics are concerned, they only migrated there in the 5th century, this period of Latium, and dominated culturally, but not genetically. Definitely. Very rarely the conquerors or even migrants dominate genetically. That they usually dissolve in the local population.
Well, like we know that Stonehenge is pre-Indo-European, right?
Yes, Stone Age is about, it's those what they call Anatolian farmers, Neolithic, that reached about 4000 BCE. And
I thought some of that stuff actually predated agriculture.
Yes, 3000 BC. I want to say 3000 BC.
No, the Stonehenge, the early circles of Stonehenge, they say around 3000 BCE. it does not predate agriculture. Agriculture started about 4000 BCE.
Yeah. But I mean, there's monoliths all over Europe. There's monoliths all over Europe. So there was a culture that put up massive things. I thought some of that predated agriculture.
Well, so, yeah, in Europe, yes, but not in Britain, not the
Okay.
Stonehenge. Yeah, of course, we know in this what's the name in Turkey? You know, it's like there are megalithic monuments there, but I'm not even sure if they predate agriculture. It seems to be very unlikely that they could have made so much effort. They would have a workforce without agriculture to do that. So it's very unlikely. But certainly Stonehenge did not. And actually they said that Stonehenge was built between 2000 and 3000 BCE, and the biggest stones were closer to 2000 BCE, but maybe the early circles maybe around.
Well, we're not for several. It'll watch it because a lot of the Indian mounds actually predate Indian agriculture too. So it's not. You're probably. It's hard to wrap your head around the idea of hunter-gatherers being prosperous, but like today they've been run off all the prosperous land. Although we kind of drifted way off the topic of Rome.
I don't know. I don't know. Megalithic cultures. I mean, it seems to be like right here. You see the Anatolian farmers moved into Europe approximately 6,000 to 7,000 BCE. I don't know where you find megalithic culture prior to that. It's hard to imagine. But anyway, so let's move on. So we talked generally about the Celtic tribes. Now let's concentrate on their movement to the east, because this is the one, the invasion of Gauls into Italy, and that you could see this happen in 390 to 387. And of course, just briefly, we know that later on they went and they invaded Greece, and 279, we were talking about 100 years later, the sack of Delphi, is very well known. And then eventually later on in 277, they crossed Bosphorus, and they established they established the area that even nowadays called Galatia. In Istanbul, there is a Galatian Gate. The tower, the Galatian Tower there, it's called because of it's looking into this area. So you see it's around Ankara, Galatia, maybe what they call Cappadocia. But it used to be called Galatia in Roman time. I think it's in Roman times, and early on. Well, anyway, so around 400 BC, Celtic tribe Senones crossed Alps, and having driven out Umbrians, they settled on the east coast of Italy, the Umbrians, and in so what they call Roman name later Roman name Gallia Cisalpina, and in 391 they invaded Etruria and besieged city of Pelusium. You remember the city of Pelusium, famous? That's where the La Porcena was from. Okay. So that's where the La Porcena. So if you remember, La Porcena in 508 attacked Rome. Now the city of Pelusium is asking for Rome's assistance. Rome is now, as we just said, achieved some local dominance in central peninsula, and now they're asking Romans for help. So Romans actually led the army and started the war with Gauls, and there was in 390. Actually, there is a date here, July 18th, 390 BCE. It was a battle of Alia where Gauls defeated Romans and proceeded to Rome, and eventually conquered almost all territory and sacked Rome, everything except Kaplan Hill. Just to- yeah, that's see the Kaplan Hill. There was the last stand. They got to all the hills. There was already dense population there. They were really doing all kinds of damage. So so at this time, by the way, Marcus Furius Camillus was in exile. You remember he was exiled by his political adversaries. So he was in exile, and the Rome is meanwhile is almost captured by Gauls. So the Camillus was hailed by all the Romans and brought him from exile, and they eventually appointed him as a dictator for a year with the task of confronting the Gauls. At the Roman base of Bay, you remember that city of Bay, which is right next to Rome here. You know, this is Rome, this is Bay. Now at this point, it's a Romans conquered that territory here. Valeri, Ray, and you know, this is the Battle of Alia, by the way. This is the battle where Romans were defeated by Gauls. So at the Roman base in Bay, Camillus gathered approximately 12,000 man army. That's a very big army from all the territories. He could gather them around the Rome, and more men join in that they were from the region. And when in 387, at this point, Rome was sacked, burned by Senons. That's where all the documents were burned, you know, because most of them were at the Kaplan Hill. You know, that was the kind of the center of Rome, the Kaplan Hill. Again, I'm sorry, not Kaplan, Palatine Hill. Palatine Hill is the first settlement of Rome, if you remember, and then the Kaplan Hill, and then a few others. But this was the center. That's where all the temples, you know. But later on, the seat of the Senate was on Kaplan Hill, and that's where they held so far with remaining troops. So the leader of Senons was a man by name Regelus. It is interesting that 100 years later, when Gauls invaded Greece and Anatolia, the leader was also Brennus. I don't know, maybe it was a common name. And by the way, I found this statue of Brennus. I believe it's in Paris. So this is his statue. I mean, obviously, it's fictionalized statue. So the Brennus finally, there was a siege of Kaplan Hill. Everything was burned, and so what happened is multiple contemporary records suggest that Senones hoped to punish Rome for violating its diplomatic neutrality in Etruria. And that's exactly what happened when city of Clusium asked for help, and the Romans intervened, and that's what led to this. What led to this war and destruction of Rome. So now Gauls poured into Rome, slaughtering civilians, looting, burning, and the Roman garrison continued to resist on Kaplan Hill for 7 months. And they gone made a havoc, and several assaults on Capitol Hill failed. And one such night attempt was even said to be thwarted by timely intervention of sacred goose or sacred geese of the temple of Juno. That was the temple. So you remember there is a saying that geese that saved the Rome. So that's like a myth or a story that supposedly during the early attack, early in the morning, the Romans were asleep, and but the geese, when they encountered the goals, they started to scream and hiss, and the Romans woke up and defended the hill. So in any event, by this point, Roman garrison must have getting dangerously low on supplies. Roman engaged with Brennus for terms and would ensure that Celts depart. And Brennus apparently agreed to leave Rome for the price of 1,000 pounds of gold. So Gauls may have been ill prepared for the siege, by the way, because also epidemic broke out among them as a result of not burying the dead. And according of some Roman historians, it was at this moment that Camillus also arrived with the Roman army, and after putting his sword on a scale, replied, "Not with gold, but with iron will the fatherland be regained." And then he attacked the Gauls. I mean, this is the mythology, obviously. A battle started in the streets of Rome, and they couldn't fight effectively. Eventually, they got outside and fought their battles. And Camillus' army supposedly defeated Gauls, and they were routed and ran away. I don't know how much of it true, but after that, Romans dubbed Camillus as second Romulus, a second founder of Rome. So he's, that's basically one thing. I just wanted to say a few things about some Roman structure as they transition to the Paul's presentation. So, but before I do so, any questions about this?
Do we actually believe the story of Camillus?
What?
Do we actually believe the story of Camillus? Like, it's nice to be able to tell a national story in which you get invaded by barbarians and you kick their asses.
Well, I don't know. It's kind of part of the national epic. I mean, it's up to, I mean, it's not, there are no records of it. I mean, we don't know if it's true or not. I mean, it's up to you whether you want to believe it or not. I mean, but
the rule of thumb is that old traditions about people are extremely unreliable. Old traditions about institutions, just the opposite, are very reliable.
All right, let me say a few words about some of the things, the social structure. So Rome had to face a severe major social crisis, the conflict of orders, political struggle for equality between plebeians, the commoners and patricians, aristocrats. These are the descendants of the first 100 senators chosen by Romulus. It was the major issue during the history of constitution of the Roman Republic and played major role in its development. Began in 494. Remember, at the time of Coriolanus, when while Rome was in war with two neighboring tribes, Asci and Volscians, the plebeians all left the city. The first plebeian secession. The result of this first secession was creation of office of plebeian tribune, and with its first acquisition of real power, tribunes also had power of veto. They could veto any unfavorable legislation on behalf of plebs, and had political immunity from even the senators. In 449, the Senate promulgated 12 tables as the centerpiece of Roman constitution and the foundation of Roman law. The law was engraved on 12 bronze tables, which were during the invasion of Gauls. However, the content were rewritten and parts of it survived to present times. In 443 BC, the office of Roman censor was created, and in 367 BC, plebeians were allowed to stand for consulship. The opening of consulship to the plebeian class implicitly opened both the censorship as well as dictatorship to plebeians in 366 BC in an effort to by the patricians to reassert their influence over the magisterial offices. Two new offices were created, and while these two offices, the praetorship and aedileship, were the first open to only patricians within generation, they were open to plebeians as well. Aediles were responsible for maintenance of public buildings and regulations of public festivals, and they also had powers to enforce public order. Okay, so this is it, and let's see if there are any more questions or comments before this is the end of my presentation, before I give the word to Poe. Okay. No question.